We've had a few females in the past try and move along in the apprenticeship, and for different various reasons, it seems to never work out. Now, the other part of our trade, tile setting, maybe terrazzo, PCC, yeah, that's pointer caulker cleaner, where you do restoration of buildings and stuff like that. They might be a little bit more apt. It's just when you get to the physicality of being a bricklayer, you know, our weights can go from like 3 pounds all the way up to 150 pounds.
I started as an apprentice, and I actually left. I was an electromechanical design engineer, and the last thing I designed was a full authority digital engine control for jet engines called a FADEC. And my neighbor happened to be building his house out of brick and block, and I went over there and I'm like, hey, I'd like to try this. The first thing he said is, well, you gotta get out of that suit or whatever, you know, because not, college isn't for everybody. I went from the military. But when I was an apprentice bricklayer for J.P. Cullen and Myron Construction, when I was still an apprentice, I became a foreman and started running work, and, you know, I could read blueprints pretty well and stuff like that. And then, it, you know, eventually my career, progressed on. But like I said, we have a lot of training. I mean, they're required to take 2 extra classes a year. We do added training for the apprentices and stuff like that. So it's been a very rewarding job for myself. I mean, and I travel the whole state. I mean, and it was actually the owner of a company up in Neenah that said, look, we want our guys to be the best trained. Instead of coming to one training place, you're going to take your training on the road. So, you know, I might be in Superior, La Crosse, Eau Claire, you know, some company, if they have a problem, or if they have a new product that they don't understand how it's installed or whatever, they call me and I go put on training classes. But it's, you know, like I said, besides that, there's a few other duties that they do, but yeah, it's a unique trade, and you take a lot of pride in what you did, you know, like Wisconsin Ag Building up on the hill, or the Dairy Expo, or these are ones that I was foreman at. Camp Randall Stadium, when we did the new exterior on the Camp Randall and all the piers and everything as you walk in, you know, I can walk into a football game and say, look, I built that, or I was a foreman on this, or a couple of dormitories for the UW, or, you know, Elkhorn Library, South Milwaukee High School. If I ever drive by them, I can say, hey, I did that, I worked there, I did this, you know, Beloit Memorial High School, all the Janesville schools, you know, there's a lot of sense of pride in some of that stuff. And like I said, it can be very unique, and a very rewarding job. I mean, if it's just like any job, you're gonna take what you get into, or you put into it. But I think people are starting to realize that, you know, college isn't for everybody, and we need the VOTEC or the hands-on and stuff like that. And a lot of people, they tend to shine. And like I said, it's never been a career move that I've ever regretted leaving. You know, designing a 10-layer circuit board or something like that. You know, as soon as I left it behind and never looked back, and I've been happy ever since. Some are coming out of high school, some are, you know, have worked in the, you know, we've had a 30-year-old apprentice or a 40-year-old apprentice actually start, you know, in the trades, whatever. But, you know, we get some out of high school, we get some that come out of the military or something. We have a few down in New Berlin that's going through training right now, or come to some few classes that, you know, were in the military, and then they come into the training and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a variety that we have coming in.
I'd say our average age is 25 years old. Then that's the apprentices probably in this area, and we've got apprentices up in the Eau Claire, La Crosse area. So that's probably the average age. Like you said, there's a variety gamut of where they're coming in, whether it's, you know, just out of high school or tried something else.
If you find a job that you love doing, you never feel like you're working another day in your life. And, you know, I have no problem, you know, teaching. It's fun for me to learn new things and teach people, you know, teach the new products and stuff like that, or even the older stuff. But I have no problem doing it on the weekend. I have no problem, you know, you never feel like you're working, you know.
There's a lot of different options out there as far as what, but, you know, you got to understand when you're picking a trade, or you're picking the bricklayers as a trade, this trade, your schooling gets paid from day one. So when you start on the job, you're contributing into it, but you're also, what you're contributing in, you're gonna get back. So you're gonna, you spend basically 144 hours every year in class, and that gets paid for. And you get a paycheck that day for it also. So let alone sitting in, a college or a tech program, you're getting paid right there. And I mean, that says something. There's zero debt when you're done with your training. And like we have Mike, we have continuing education. And even our apprentices and journey workers, they get paid to go to school, even when you're a journeyman. So we encourage our people to be trained and have continuous training. So I think hands down, that's the best thing. The only upfront cost would probably be your tools. You're probably talking maybe $200 to $300 for for a bricklayer to have his trowel and hammer and levels. And there's some smaller tools that he has to have, tuck pointing tools, but $200 to $300 is about all you're gonna have as startup time. And most contractors are pretty generous to begin with. They'll get them on the job. If you come out of this when you start fresh out of high school, have no experience on the job or construction, they'll work you into it. They'll allow you. There's some stuff that we can coordinate with some other trades. We work with the laborers and setting scaffold and stuff like that. So he has sawing. There's help laying out with other journeymen. So there's things that he can progress to start getting a paycheck to buy his tools that he needs. They do get a list of contractors, which we say you go out and go and solicit yourself. There's different companies out there that have different procedures. Some will make them come in, get an application. Some will do both application and interview right there. Sometimes companies have a committee, apprenticeship committee that, of different trades and that interview the people. And sometimes it just happens to work out that, the contractor's picking up the phone, they always have the list of applicants, or they pick up the phone and say, hey, who do you have? And we try to refresh that list up to them and then, just try to get them going. So, the last 3 years have been pretty tough, for a lot of trades. Some of the trades like the iron workers and that have came back, a little bit sooner, but they're earlier in the job where they've progressed and be able to put on apprentices. We're just starting to see that light, I think, this year. I mean, you look around Madison, there's a lot of tower cranes up and stuff like that. So we're hoping that, our contractors are eager to put some apprentices on. So.
And we might recommend an apprentice or something like that. I mean, I have a Milwaukee office. I have one up here on the Beltline too, down at the IMI Training Center down in New Berlin. But, there was 2 gentlemen in there, Mike and Rob, I can remember right now. It's like, if they were laid off or they weren't doing nothing or they got a rain day and they were apprentice, they would come into the training center and, they can lay brick, they can lay block, they can do anything. But Rob's really gotten into like stone carving, which is a lost art. There's not too many out there in the world. But they come in on their days off. I mean, that's another thing, that, people say, well, you gotta take a furlough or something. If it's raining or it's cold, there's a lot of times we're not going to work. We'll show up, we'll drive, and hey, it's raining, and we're not gonna work today, or iron workers have that, and the construction trades, it can be difficult like that. But these 2 kids, I'm like, and I called a few companies, I said, you guys wouldn't be very smart if you don't add these 2. And they've been working ever, they just love them. They do whatever they want. They have a very good passion for the job. So, there is some incidents like that where you'll see some of that kind of stuff too. So.